r/ask Reddit. Have you ever laughed so hysterically at something so simple you were starting to get legitimately worried that you were losing your sanity or something? About what were you laughing so hard then? It was a windy day and I was eating a bagged lunch with my co-workers. Suddenly a huge gust of wind blows a bag and all my food away, leaving me staring at an empty table with a fork in my hand. I didn't even try to catch it. I just started laughing so hard I had to lay on the ground. The ability to laugh at my own pain is like my only superpower. I had a dream recently that a friend of mine spent 2 full hours focusing intensely hard on writing something down. When he was finally finished, he showed it to me in a 5-year-old's handwriting in crayon. The page simply read apple cider dog nuts. I laughed so hard I woke myself up crying. Also, I was once at a small but serious poetry reading event at my university. A few people spoke about different connections they had to the poet, like the host of the event who introduced had gone to grad school with her, the university president who had worked with her mentor, etc. My friend whispered to me in this goofy voice and I ducked her mom. We both were laughing so hard people were turning around to glare like 4 rows ahead. Even though we were trying to be silent, I laughed on and off for half an hour and had to leave the event early because it was so disruptive and inappropriate. I didn't question my sanity, but I got stuck in a laughing loop with my then 1-year-old son. He was laughing at my laugh and I was laughing at his. It was the better part of an hour and we were both exhausted afterward. It was over 30 years ago and it still makes me sad when I think about it. This reminds me of a sleepover I had in middle school. There wasn't enough couch space for all of us girls to sleep on, so me and a few of my friends were on the floor. I can't explain why, but everything I heard was hilarious. I laughed until it hurt to smile. I justified it by saying that everything is funny on the floor, so we all took turns lying on the carpet and laughing our asses off. The people on the couch started laughing at the people on the floor, and the people on the floor were laughing because the people on the couch were laughing. It still holds true today, everything really is funny on the floor. My mom once said boo to my dad who kept hiccuping to make him stop. She said it in the most innocent and pure way that we couldn't stop laughing. The laughing went on for like an hour though. Years ago I was having drinks with my best friend when she developed the hiccups. I told her I would have to scare her. About 5 minutes later, I told her I had something very serious to talk to her about. She leaned in, looking a little worried. I sighed heavily and said, "You're pregnant." Her eyes got huge and in a panicked voice she asked, "I am?" She immediately realized her mistake, but it was too late. I was dying laughing, literal tears running down my face. I couldn't pull it together. It's still a memory that makes me giggle, and the best part is it worked. Her hiccups stopped. I don't remember the context, but my best friend and I, then in our pre-teens early teens, were flopping around on her bedroom floor and screaming fish out of water. We insisted on showing her mom, who looked at us like we were on meth. I almost passed out. I could not breathe from laughing so hard. I read a meme asking if Norwegian clowns say jonk. My girlfriend speaks fluent Norwegian and told me how that would be pronounced. Kind of a he-yonk. I thought I was going to pass out from lack of air due to laughing. I'd catch a grip every now and then and a quiet he-yonk would corpse me into laughing harder. It was late and my wife was driving us home. We passed by an A&W, a fast food chain with its own root beer. My wife said, "Hey, you know what A&W stands for?" And I said I assumed it was the initials of the founders. She said, "No, it's for hamburgers and woot beer," and I instantly and fully lost my shit. Her delivery was so cute and I was so tired that I laughed about it for the entire rest of the 15-minute drive. For the next several days I was still giggling every time I thought about it. This reminds me of the funniest thing my wife has ever done. We were on a weekend trip to New York City and I was in a level 9 fury over the shitty people and driving we'd dealt with all day. We got stuck in a traffic jam after hitting up a Sonic for late night dessert on the way back to our hotel and I was fuming. Without missing a beat, she takes a spoonful of her ice cream and just starts saying, "Lieutenant Dan, I got you some ice cream from Forrest Gump." I no sold it and didn't want to break my focus on being mad, and all of a sudden I see the spoon enter my line of vision from the left as she just says in an elongated fashion, "Lieutenant Dan, ice cream." I burst out laughing and we laughed for like 10 minutes in traffic. It's still regularly brought up as one of our inside jokes and makes me smile to this day. I was breastfeeding my newborn in the middle of the night and watching Dave Chappelle. The Rick James skit was on. I laughed so hard that my husband woke up and took the baby away because he was afraid I was going to drop him. He asked me what was wrong and I snorted, "I'm Rick James Beach." He was not amused. My friend and I were watching Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs when we were about 12. There's a scene in that movie where a giant bowl of water spills on everybody sitting in bleachers. And there's a guy in the splash zone ready to get wet. Except everybody except him gets splashed instead. And he throws his hat on the ground and yells, "AW, come on." My friend and I laughed our asses off at this. And this eventually led to us replaying a ton of scenes in slow motion, zoomed in, etc. There was a scene in South Park where they are trying to get a whale to the moon. Long story. Makes no sense. But there was one gag that the boys cannot get NASA to do it, so they go to MASA, the Mexican Space Agency. So, when the rocket takes off with the whale, some mariachis come out and play a song to celebrate. I don't know why, but it caught us off guard and a friend and me started laughing so hard and so long I thought I was going to die of asphyxia. My family was eating at Red Robin. My grandpa told a great joke. I laughed so hard that I shit my pants. I was like 5. My dad took me to the restroom and asked if they were my lucky underwear. I said no, cut them off with his pocket knife, cleaned me up and went back out to finish our food. I was in INSAT class and we were going over practice questions. The instructor read out a group of spoon collectors, and I began laughing so hard and for so long that I had to leave the classroom. I'm over it now, but it was troubling. A group of spoon collectors is known as a drawer. I was cackling like a witch at a memory that wasn't even that funny. I just remembered I had accidentally called a cup of tea a cup of tea. What made me look insane was that I started bursting out laughing in the backseat of my mum's car when her and my sister was talking about how many people had died BC of the last pandemic. Yeah, that was probably horrific to hear. Misheard an episode of Octonauts about the coconut crab. The phrase astronaut crabs conjured simultaneous images of crabs in spacesuits and also giant crabs cracking open astronauts with their claws. And I absolutely lost it. I could hardly breathe. There were tears of mirth. My children were terrified but also trying to keep up with the joke, which I could barely explain. We still talk about it, but it will never be quite as funny as when my brain caught me by surprise. Me and some friends went on a trip with this youth leadership organization. The trip was supposed to last 5 days, but our flight back home was delayed a full 22 hours. We ended up staying in a hotel and playing Cards Against Humanity. I think the prompt had something to do with the worst line on a first date or something like that. One of us answered yeast. We laughed for 10 full minutes and my sides hurt for the rest of the night. I was reading a list, probably on BuzzFeed IDK, and it was one of those that had alternate names for things, like Danger Noodle for snakes, etc. And I got to volcano equals mountain fountain and I legitimately laughed for 20 minutes. Had to pee, cried, couldn't breathe, the whole works. I couldn't even think about it for weeks without cracking up again. My husband thought I had honestly lost my mind. I used to work for Apple. I was the tech support person for whatever the issue was, and I remember having this conversation with one of the callers while we were fixing her phone and we were talking about the different names for animals and I asked her if she knew what a danger noodle was and she said she didn't, so I explained what it was and man did she explode into laughter for so long that it got me crying from laughing so hard while working that my manager came over to make sure I was doing my work, and OMG, me and this girl laughed so hard and so long over all the other names after Danger Noodle, and that's easily one of my top 5 customer calls. I miss being a tech support person. Me and 2 of my friends were working on a movie, but we messed up some files and accidentally replaced the black screen after a character's suicide with a panorama of cinnamon rolls. I'm in Toys R Us with my 3-year-old who suddenly says she has to go to the bathroom. Oh no. Number 1 or 2? 2. I grab her hand and rush to find an employee. Do you have a bathroom? Yes, but it's all the way on the other end of the store. I turn to my daughter, we gotta run, okay? Nah, don't worry. I blow it out. What's that now? I blew it out. I could barely carry my shitty daughter through the store because I was laughing uncontrollably. Had to ditch her pants and underwear in the bathroom garbage and carry her naked ass out with my coat wrapped around her waist. Still laughing hysterically. I must have looked absolutely insane. Late at night during a middle school sleepover, my friends and I started to play a board game called Worst Case Scenario. The cover has 2 pictures on it, one of a shark and one of a man running from a swarm of bees. Somebody pointed out it looked like the guy was running from the bees straight into the shark's mouth and we laughed for 10 minutes straight. The true worst case scenario. Oh my gosh, I have that game. I've never encountered anyone else who has played it. Sometime in the mid to late aughts, my husband was on the phone with iRobot customer support regarding our Roomba. I was in another room, but I could hear his side of the conversation clearly, and I could tell he wasn't getting the results he'd hoped for. As he got more frustrated, he blurted out, "I've had problems with this robot since the day I brought it home." Something about that particular phrase just hit me hard. I immediately started laughing and couldn't stop. I was still laughing when he got off the phone. Understandably, he wanted to know what was wrong with me. Through maniacal laughter, I parroted the phrase back to him, which had something of a feedback loop effect on my laughter. It's been over a decade, but thinking of that phrase still makes me giggle. My husband was on the phone with Xbox 360 tech support back in 07 because one of the games he downloaded didn't work. He kept trying to tell the tech the name of the game but the tech couldn't understand him. So he goes streets of rage. Rage. Like what I am feeling right now. And my mom and I just cracked the duck up. We had tears coming out of our eyes. I don't know why it was so funny, but here we are 13 years later still cracking up about it. This actually happened to me and a friend of mine. We were high and typing random phrases into Google Translate. He suggested I type in dingleberries and translated to Spanish. It translated to bias del dingle. For some reason we lost our shit at that. I don't think we stopped laughing for half an hour. My head was throbbing from laughing so hard and my lungs hurt. It just took me 20 minutes to be able to read this comment to my partner to a point where he could understand me because I just kept losing it at bias del dingle hahaha. Happens to me quite a bit while reading Reddit. The last one was a comment about a preacher referring to God as the great comforter and the author envisioned a hideous blanket. I'm cracking up again thinking about it. I was telling a joke to a friend in 8th grade science and I got sent out into the hall because I was laughing too much. And I didn't even finish the joke, and it wasn't even that funny. I still don't understand it. A young cousin of mine was reading a book about a farmer, Farmer Brown, to her teddy bear. She paused to say something about it to the bear, and I asked what's his name. She looked at me, completely dead-faced, and said Farmer Brown as though I were a complete idiot. I laughed so hard I ended up crying, puking, and I think I very nearly went into some sort of convulsion. This reminds me of one time we were visiting a family friend with one of my stepbrothers. He was about 7 at the time, and the guy's cat comes over to us. He goes, "I call him Baby Bear. Doesn't he look like a little baby bear?" in the most jovial voice. My stepbrother is just like, no. The guy's expression completely deadens and he's like, you were supposed to say yes. On a movie me and my family was watching, a man was slowly lifting a gun to fire at a woman. They didn't show her getting hit. They only showed a close-up of her high heels staggering back and forth. I lost it laughing. Everybody in the room was glaring at me. I was in high school when one of my friends said something stupid and another replied, "What do you have in your head?" Confetti. The mental image of a head suddenly exploding into confetti still cracks me up to this day. My bathroom fan recently started squeaking. When my 5-year-old heard it, she said Dad put the fan in crazy sound mode. I still laugh every time I hear it. I was reminiscing about a yoga class when my BF decided to join. During a quiet, wind-down stretching session, he farted loudly, the bubbly cheeks flappy kind, and it took all the strength in me to not laugh out loud because shaming is frowned upon in class. The worst part was when the instructor stopped talking for a while and I imagine it's because she had to also regain her composure and not fart shame as well. Those 2 minutes were so brutal as I silently shook trying to contain my inner peace. Couldn't even look at my BF's face until we left the building. Wife and I were in yoga class and it was always a 50-50 proposition that I'd fart at some point. So it happens and I giggled a bit. Wife says, God, can't you do something about that? Next pose is something or other baby pose and wife rips this really quick high-pitched fart like letting air out of balloon and I just laid back on the mat shaking like I was having a seizure trying to keep from laughing out loud. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.